Alex Kennedy from HoopsHype.com takes a look at all the NBA playoff stuff. We got great storylines, Alex says. We get into this one, but we'll have to start off with the performance of LeBron James last night. 26-point lead for Indiana, and LeBron, not Kyrie, no Love. It seemingly they were completely out of the mix here. This was a LeBron James epic performance.
Yeah, it was incredible. Watching him kind of come down the floor on a few different possessions and just pull up from really deep from three-point range and make everything. I mean, it was really impressive. Really, it was clear that Indiana, maybe at first you could question some of the decisions they made in terms of their rotation and their defense, but it became pretty clear that no matter who was out there or what was happening, LeBron was going to find a way to either get a better or a worse defender to switch on him or get a better matchup. He was making everything. I mean, it was an incredible performance. He didn't turn the ball over once in the second half, even though he had the ball in his hands a ton. He was scoring everything, and then he was getting everyone else involved too. There were a few plays where, he got Channing Frye, easy basket, got J.R. Smith an easy basket, and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love weren't even out there. So really LeBron deserves all the credit for that comeback. It was incredible. And it's amazing to me that he can still do stuff like that and play almost every minute, at this age. And he hasn't really shown any signs of decline. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, one thing, you watch that game, they haven't lost a first-round game, or LeBron hasn't lost a first-round game, 20 straight games. You wonder when this Cleveland team will no longer kind of be the favorite. In other words, when will LeBron not be looked at as, hey, you don't have a shot to win the first-round series because LeBron's on the team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because I think right now you certainly can't count out a team if they have LeBron because he can, have these incredible performances even if their team is down. I think it's going to get to that point eventually whenever he, has lost more of his athleticism. But that's been, the interesting thing about his development is that, he's such a good passer and he's turned into a good shooter. So he can still have a huge impact on games when he's not able to take over athletically. He has the fundamentals and the skill set to do that. So it's been interesting. I think, a lot of people are kind of looking at this matchup and wondering what would happen to LeBron with a guy like Paul George, who's in his prime right now and having an amazing series, even though they're losing 0-3. He's putting up monster numbers, almost a triple-double and 35 points per game. I mean, it's been incredible. But even still, they've lost every game, and LeBron has put up monster numbers as well. So even though this is a bad matchup for LeBron or what some people said, he's still having a fantastic series. I think he's shown that we're still a few years away from that point where, he's not going to be leading a team past the first round just by himself. Yeah,
and, the one thing with this Cleveland team, they're up 3-0. They're going to win this series. But does last night's game at all have you teetering on them? I know it's so hard because Boston's down 2-0. Toronto got blown out last night. I don't know how serious we look at Washington just yet, even though they're kind of cruising along in their series. Did last night at least get you teetering on Cleveland at all?
I think, entering the playoffs, I was a little bit concerned about their defense, and, they're very inconsistent, which is always concerning if you're a top team, a team that's expected to go on a championship run. You don't want to have those inconsistencies. Honestly, I think, if anything, last night, it just gives them more confidence because, they almost lost game one. They gave up a big lead in game two and kind of let the Pacers back into it. And then last night had the huge awful deficit to end the first half. And then, they just come back and show how good they are and how much better that they are than the Indiana team. So I think, there was definitely a lot to be concerned about early on. They were making the Pacers look like the Warriors out there. But then they showed why they're the best team by being able to come back. And I think it gave their role players confidence, too. The fact that they did that without Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, I think that's huge for their team's confidence. Guys like Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith and Channing Frye, that can help them a lot going forward. And I think it also puts more, I think guys like LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin are going to have more trust in those guys now going forward. So actually, I think it did the opposite for me, especially because, like you said, I don't see a team in the Eastern Conference that can compete with them. Boston's struggling. Toronto's been really bad so far. I wouldn't be surprised they lost in the first round. Washington's been good, but how much of that is Atlanta being bad? I think there's definitely a lot of question marks in the Eastern Conference. So if you're a team like the Cavs, you can kind of write off their struggles and say, okay, but they're still the best team.
Alex, let's look at Indianapolis for a second. You said Paul George there. Is this it for Paul George? And if you're Larry Bird, what's on your to-do list now?
Well, I think, after this series ends, if I'm Larry Bird, I want to sit down with Paul George and pick his brain a little bit because at the trade deadline, there were reports that he was unhappy. He didn't like the supporting cast around him. He felt like they didn't do a good enough job, making this team into a contender this year. But also there was talk that he had long-term questions as well about some of the pieces in place. And if that's true, and if he does have one foot out the door, then I think you look to trade him. You don't want to lose a star like that for nothing in 2018 when free agency comes around, especially if he already has his mind on a big market like LA, where he's from. You want to trade him now before that final year of his contract, so you can still get some good value back in return. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened. Certainly if he wants to stay, then you're going to keep him and try to build around him. But, Jeff Teague's a free agent this summer. They do have some young guys that they could kind of turn and rebuild around, guys like Miles Turner. I think it's something you have to consider if you're the Pacers and he's unhappy.
Talk with Alex Kennedy. The Cavs up 3-0. James, 41 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists, 2 blocks, no turnovers in the second half. They win. The other big emerging story happened today where alert on my phone, Rondo out indefinitely, broken thumb. We know Boston looks like they're in a world of trouble, I should say. Has this, changed the dynamics of this series, or do the Celtics right now look like a team that just doesn't have enough firepower? The Bulls, they got Butler, they got Wade. I mean, Rondo was playing at a great level. Are the Bulls the better team, or do you think this Rondo injury opens the door for Boston?
Well, this is such a weird series because I thought Chicago was going to get destroyed in the series. I think I told you that last week. So I've been really shocked that Boston's lost these first 2 games. I think on the glass, they've just been getting destroyed. Robin Lopez is looking unstoppable out there. And, everyone in the starting lineup is getting rebounds for Chicago. I do think it is a big issue for the Bulls, though, because they really don't have a strong backup point guard. They have Michael Carter-Williams, they have Jerry Grant, but I'm not sure I trust either of those guys in a postseason game against Boston. I think, they can find a way to, make those guys turn the ball over, put up bad shots, settle for bad possessions. So I think I'd almost rather put the ball in Jimmy Butler's hands or Dwayne Wade's hands and say, can you guys be the facilitator and just play point out there? I think I'd almost rather go with a point forward kind of approach rather than going with Carter Williams or Grant. So I think it could change the series because then, if they do go young, then certainly that opens up a area of weakness for Boston. And then if they do move Butler or Wade, then, that puts them out of position too. So either way, it's good for Boston. But it's just, and you look at last game, Rondo almost had a triple-double. He was really doing a good job. It's crazy because he was bad all year long, and now he's been playing great basketball. So it does help Boston. And certainly, Boston needs to win probably both these games on the road in order to get the series back, in an area where they can feel comfortable and where they're within reach of winning. But I don't know. This series has been so weird and so unpredictable. And honestly, Chicago is so inconsistent. It wouldn't surprise me to see Boston turn back around and win this series. I think Boston's better than they've played. And obviously they've had a lot of stuff off the court that's going on too, which is obviously sad and it has impacted them. Between that and everything going on with Chicago throughout the season and how inconsistent they've been, I'm not ready to say the series is over one way or the other.
Alex, Mike and I have talked about it seems like there's a lack of rim protection, and that's really been a factor in this series. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look back at the trade deadline when Boston decided not to make any moves, everyone kind of questioned that at the time. They didn't go out and add a rebounder or a rim protector. They didn't go get a perimeter defender. And, teams like Toronto did go do that. They added Serge Ibaka. They added PJ Tucker. I think other teams addressed their weaknesses as well. Houston made their bench even stronger with Lou Williams. Other contenders went out and made moves. Even, Cleveland and Washington were really active in the buyout market. So it's interesting to me because I think Boston, you look at them and they're trying to, prepare for the future while also be competitive now. And at times, you can do that and maintain that flexibility. But at the same time, you have to wonder, okay, this is a team that with Isaiah Thomas and Al Horford and Jay Crowder and Avery Bradley, they're ready to win now. These guys are in their prime. And then, you're still keeping a lot of these young guys on the roster and developing them, keeping that Brooklyn pick. And then instead of trading for a guy like maybe Jimmy Butler or Paul George at the deadline, and then certainly I think if they had made a move like that, you're looking at this Boston team very differently right now. And you're wondering if they are the team that we're really talking about as the top team in the East, just because Cleveland's had so many issues and they're having question marks for the Cavs. So it's interesting to me that they didn't make any moves. They didn't go out and try to add anyone either, by signing someone or by trading for someone. And I think it's really kind of something that's really hurt them in the first round. But they do have that pick still. They did maintain that flexibility. So I guess that's what Danny Ainge, put over that. For me, it kind of makes me wonder, did he look at this core and say, can a team that has a guy like George or a guy like Butler alongside Thomas and Horford? Are they good enough to beat Golden State? Are they good enough to beat Cleveland? If you feel like the answer is no, then that's why maybe it makes sense to keep that pick and keep that flexibility moving forward.
Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com, here on NBA playoffs. Give me your assessment of what is happening to the Toronto Raptors right now. Is it that they have lost confidence? Are they just completely shell-shocked? Is Milwaukee that good? I mean, what do you say about the way that series has gone?
I think it's a few different things. I think Milwaukee's that good. We talked about that a lot in recent weeks about this team being better than their record and having the best player in that series by far with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think also this is a Toronto team that has had playoff issues in recent years. So whenever they do get down in a series or they do start struggling, they immediately have, that reaction. They kind of overreact and they do get shell-shocked. Kyle Lowry can disappear in a playoff game. He should be dominated in that series if you look at the matchup. Of every all-star point guard, he has the easiest matchup. He has, Malcolm Brogdon and Matthew Dellavedova, and he's not dominating that series. And that's a huge issue for the Raptors that, he's not putting up more points and having his way with those role players. And then DeMar DeRozan, really that team relies so much on isolation mid-range jumpers. And that's not what you want in a playoff series. And it's certainly not going to be enough when you fall down 15, 20 points to be able to make a comeback. So I think Milwaukee's the better team. They're designed to give teams problems and cause mismatches with their size and their length. Giannis is having a coming out party and has been dominant, and they have no answer for him or Thon Maker. And I think Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, they just struggle sometimes at finding their shot. And then when they do that, I think they overthink things rather than, stepping up in the postseason. They tend to struggle a bit and let their past failures kind of creep back into their mind.
The comment that you made saying that I think Milwaukee's just a better team, I mean, that's stunning, right? I mean, the fact that this was a team, Toronto, that went to the Eastern Conference Finals. They made the trade to get Ibaka. Many people thought that they would give Cleveland the biggest threat, even though they ended up, the 3 seed this year. The fact that Milwaukee is in this spot right now, do you think Milwaukee is a legit challenger if they get through this series?
Well, I don't think they're a legit challenger for a team like Cleveland. I think that, this is a really good matchup for them. And I think that really winning in the first round and getting some of that playoff experience, I think that's huge for them. But I just think if they were to play a team like Cleveland, I think they would struggle a bit. I even think if they're playing a team like Boston, they might struggle a little bit. I'm not really high on this Toronto team, to be honest with you. Entering the playoffs, I was really low on them. I'm not a big fan of their offense and some of the decisions they make. I think that, playing iso ball with Lowry and DeRozan, that can win you games, a lot of games in the regular season, because there's a lot of teams that can't match up against them. But in a 7-game series, that's pretty easy to make adjustments around. And I also think this Toronto team, you can't really trust to lead with them. And if they get down in the series, then they start, second-guessing themselves. And that's been the case for a few years now. So I think, this is a really good series for Milwaukee. But if they do face a team like Cleveland or if they advance to the next round and have to face a really good, experienced team, I think they could run into some problems. And I think there's more things that I think a better coach than Dwayne Casey could, put together a game plan that could try to slow Giannis down a bit more, try to make him settle for, long jumpers rather than letting him get to the basket over and over again. And then whenever he comes out of the game, all they really do is go to Greg Monroe, and they haven't found a way to slow him down during those sets either. So I think there's a lot of questionable things there. But certainly I think in 2 or 3 years, you're looking at this Milwaukee team as a legitimate contender.
Yeah, they're and you mentioned Thon Maker too, a guy that it was a first-round pick. Kind of people opened their eyes a little bit. They thought Milwaukee took him a little high. He didn't play all that much. He still doesn't play all that much. But when he's out there, you're seeing a guy who, man, 2-3 years down the road, it seems like with him and Antetokounmpo, they're going to have 2 young, long guys making an impact. That team is really intriguing to keep an eye on. As here in Philly, you're looking at what the Sixers are doing. We could be going back to like the 1980s with Sixers-Bucks battling in the playoffs in a couple of years.
Yeah, I love it. I think this Milwaukee team, with their size and their length, they're going to be so hard to match up against. I think Giannis is almost 7 feet tall right now and has the crazy wingspan, can do everything on the floor. And then, Thon Maker, he's going to be really good in a few years. I like his potential an awful lot. They're kind of taking things slowly with him and developing him. But I did a piece on him during this season a few months ago, and Jabari Parker told me that he thinks Thon's going to be the best 7-footer in the league eventually. So they have high expectations for both of these guys. I think Giannis could be a top 5 player in the NBA. He's that good on both ends of the floor. And then Thon, it's hard to say what his ceiling is. I think when he first got drafted, everyone was surprised because, they took him number 10 overall. But he's really developed a ton, and he fits their scheme so perfectly, having so much size and length. He can do everything they want from him, inside and out. So I think he's going to be very good as well. I'm not sure what his ceiling is, but if he becomes half the player Jabari Parker predicts he'll be dominant. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun over the next few years, kind of watching them develop. They're one of those young cores that really it seems like the sky's the limit for them.
Did somebody say Jack Sigma? Is that what I heard? Did somebody say that?
Larry Kristoviak, right? You got a couple 7-footers out there. We're talking with Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. Oklahoma City has just been, outmanned? Is that how you would describe that? Just not enough? Houston just has a flat out, just has a better roster?
Yeah, I think so. Not only do they have a better roster, but this is a team that just scores the ball so much. So it's really hard for one guy like Westbrook to kind of go up against them and beat them in a shootout. He showed that he's going to try to put up as many shots as he can and score 50-plus points. But when you're facing a team that not only has James Harden, but also has Lou Williams, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Trevor Ariza, Patrick Beverly, go down the list. They have so many guys that can score the ball and knock down open threes that it becomes really hard for one player to step up and have a huge game. And that's why I said Oklahoma City's best bet in the series was getting Westbrook to be more of a distributor. And, yeah, you want him scoring the ball, a decent amount, but you want him to get guys like Victor Oladipo and Steven Adams and that supporting cast some easy buckets and have them kind of be more of a helper for Westbrook, but they haven't really been able to do that. Everyone on this team offensively has struggled over the first two games, and I give Houston a lot of credit for being able to have two really good wins. The first win especially was a huge blowout. I think this Houston team just is more well-rounded, and they have they're playing really well in Mike D'Antoni's system right now.
Do you think Oklahoma City though gets back into this at home?
I really don't think so. I think I predicted 5 games that this series would go for Houston. I just think they have a better roster, and you're asking Westbrook to do too much to go, 1-on-5 against a team like this. There's certain teams that Westbrook can do that against and win just because they don't have the talent to kind of go up against him or put up enough points. But I think, unless he gets some help from those guys, they're not going to be able to stick with this Rockets team for very long. So I had Houston advancing pretty quickly past Oklahoma City. You almost want Russ to go up and get his points and then have them lose. So I think that's kind of the strategy they went with so far. And then they basically dared other players to go beat them too. They've left Andre Roberson wide open from 3. Last game he missed all of his attempts. Victor Oladipo hasn't done much. I mean, really, you look at this OKC team, it's been a lot of Russell Westbrook and not much of anything else.
How about Memphis, Alex? It looked like they matched their coach's intensity. Fizdale comes out and gets that big rant about the officiating, and then they come out last night and they just ran over the Spurs. Do the Grizzlies have life? Are you buying into the Grizzlies?
Well, I mean, this Memphis team, it's really hard to bet against them because they do have so many veterans on that team that have been deep in the playoffs and know what it takes to win in the postseason. Whereas, and you look at the San Antonio team, and while they're very good, there's a lot of times where I watch them and I wonder, how they won this many games. Greg Popovich is a wizard out there with, getting what he's gotten out of some of these players. There's times that they're playing Pau Gasol and David Lee in the front court together, and that should be a front court that's getting dominated on the defensive end. But they have the team defense and the players around them where it's okay, and they can get through those stretches. I think Memphis has enough fight in them to make some of these games close going forward. But I do think that San Antonio is still the better team. I do think that Durant fired those guys up. We saw, Marc Gasol, Mike Conley, and then some of those young players too, guys like, JaMychal Green and Wayne Selden. Those guys stepped up in a big way. And I think that rant, definitely helped light a fire under the team. But I am curious to see if they can keep this up. I do think San Antonio is really good at home, so that's going to be really tough for them if they have to go win one on the road, and certainly they will to try to take over the series. But I do think that they can play better at home, and this Memphis team, going to Game 4, they definitely could make things more interesting than the first 2 games showed.
Alex Kennedy, Hoops Hype. All right, just quick, rapid here. Chicago, Boston. Is Boston going to be 2-2 back in Boston?
Yeah, I think so. I'll go with that right now. I'm not really confident with the Chicago team. I think that's probably the issue for me more than Boston. More than like Boston, it's that I'm low on the Bulls. So, and then with Rondo out, they're going to have to adjust. I think I'll say 2-2, yeah. Okay.
You already kind of hinted that you think Oklahoma City's out of it. What will the story be, Utah and the Lakers, the Clippers, I should say, when we get to Monday?
Well, I think Rudy Gobert is availability is going to be the big question. I think because he's wanted to play these past 2 games, and they've said, even though he could play through the pain, they were worried about him, injuring himself worse. So I think that's going to be the big thing. Can he get to a point where he can be on the floor? Because they're missing him a ton defensively, of course, with his shot blocking, but also offensively because he gets easy dunks and is a really good screener for them. So I think his availability is going to be the big question mark, especially if, they go and lose to the Clippers. And I think that's very possible. This Clippers team is, they're playing really good right now. I think they're playing some of their best basketball of the season.
Let's see here. Will Atlanta be in this series when we get to Monday?
I don't think so. I think this Wizards team is so much better, and they don't really have an answer for John Wall.
All right. Toronto, you think 2-2 by Monday?
I don't think so. I think Milwaukee's in a great place right now, and I think this series probably ends sooner than later.
All right, Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com, all the NBA playoffs. You can hear them tonight, Saturday, and Sunday, all on 97.3 ESPN. Always a pleasure, pal. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Take care.